Okay, welcome to this video where we look at how we answer and approach the OCR A-level 10 marker for the French Revolution. So let's just go through the ingredients for what makes a good answer. You should be spending no more than 15 to 20 minutes on this question. And it's very similar to the 20 marker, just a little bit more kind of stripped back in terms of the expectations. So first of all, you must start with an introduction. In your introduction, you just outline your argument and your reason for your argument. In particular, you need to be thinking about which factor was more important. So it always say which factor is more important. You say which one you think and you say why. Okay, that's it. It should only be a sentence or two. So when I show you the model that I do in a second, you'll be able to see that. Then we do 2 paragraphs. Always do your more important factor first. And in every paragraph, it's the same as kind of, I've left the wording as the same as for the 20 marker. You should be given specific evidence, explaining how that evidence is linked to the question, and then evaluating in a mini conclusion at the end of each paragraph, linking back to your overall argument in the intro, and then comparing the factors as well. Okay. And then finally, your conclusion should wrap up the entire essay and restate your argument. Okay. The key thing for this question is you must do a conclusion. So if you're running out of time, same for the 20 marker, please make sure that you get the conclusion in. Otherwise, they will take marks off you. Okay. Because you're not having that sustained judgment. So, but yeah, that's basically how you do it. So let's have a look at a practice question. So here is the question I'm going to have a go at. So which of the following had the greater impact on the development of the French Revolution? The civil constitution of the clergy, the flight to Varennes. Now, this question is not the easiest question, I would say. It's actually one of the more difficult 10 markers they've asked. And I'll explain why. So a lot of the 10 markers will be quite straightforward. So you just compare the factors and you say which one's more important. Some of them will require you, though, to unpick the question a little bit. And this is one of those. So if you do not talk about what is meant by the development of the French Revolution, you're not really answering the question at any point, okay? Because if you're saying this helped to develop the French Revolution because the examiner, when they're marking, they'll be thinking, well, what is the French Revolution? What does that mean, the development of the French Revolution? So in this answer, and for some of the others, so when I upload a video of me going through all the past questions that they've answered, and just planning my thoughts, you'll see that some of them have this aspect where you have to define what's in the question. Others don't. Okay, so this is an example where you would need to define. All right. So civil constitutions of the clergy and flight to Varennes are our 2 factors. Okay. So in terms of the planning, then let me just open a planning grid. So we're coming back to do the argument. So we've got P1 and then P2. Now, so just to remind yourself, pause the screen. Here's the mind map that we've been looking at. So in particular, we're going to look at the civil constitutions of the clergy, which is just here. So I'd pause it and have a little read through that. And then flight to Varennes is over here. So just if I move my video just there. Okay. Right. So we will start with when I'm looking at this question, the first thing I'm going to be thinking about, well, what is meant by the development of the French Revolution? Now, from my perspective, a revolution is any event which radically breaks with the past. Okay. So in this case, it's an event which would have changed or broken with the ancien regime. And some key features of the ancien regime are obviously the fact that the absolute monarchy. Another key feature is the fact that the church supported absolutism. And those are the kinds of thoughts I'd be having when defining my key terms. And when we think about which event marks a more radical break with the past, we would have to probably say the civil constitutions of the clergy, because that completely changes for the long term the nature of the church. Whereas the flight to Varennes leads to a loss of faith in the king in the short term, but in the long term, does it erode his reputation? For some, it might do, and for some, it might lead to kind of like the end of like calling for an end to monarchy. But there's also quite a few people in France who forgive him. Okay, and it's worth bearing that in mind. So in terms of this, then my first paragraph is going to be on civil constitutions, and then my second paragraph would be on flight to Varennes. If I was doing this, and my argument is going to be that civil constitutions marked a more radical break with the ancien regime in the long term, whereas flight to Varennes did erode faith in the monarchy in the short term, but not necessarily in the long term. Okay, and in my civil constitutions paragraph, I will be talking about the nature of the church and the position of the church. Talking about fixed pay scales, clerical oath, diocese, absenteeism, and pluralism, and so on. Okay. And then the other thing I would be talking about as well is for flight to Verne, I'd be talking about what it was. So I'd briefly mention the key events in the flight. And then the key thing you want to be talking about is the proclamation. And then you'd want to be consider how it erodes the faith in monarchy. So you'd want to be talking about Champ de Mars there and Marat's radical calls for action. Okay, so this is basically how I do my intro for this question. So I'm going to write this relatively quickly because obviously in the exam you won't get much time. So I'll start by saying the development of, or the French Revolution, in fact, the development of the French Revolution, oh, hang on. When assessing an event's impact on the development of the French Revolution, we should be, in fact, no, we're not going to do that. That doesn't make sense. So the French Revolution, a revolution. See, this is what happened. It's okay to kind of go over and to reassess constantly. So a revolution is an event which marks a radical break with the past. When assessing the development, the impact of an event on the development of the French Revolution, we must consider to what extent that event had an impact, or to what extent that event broke with the Ancien regime and changed the nature, or changed France, and radically changed France. In this case, the civil constitutions of the clergy had a greater impact on the development of the revolution, as it marked a permanent long-term break with the position of the church. A key feature, oh, hang on, no, as it marked a permanent long-term change to the position of the church, a key aspect of the Ancien regime, whereas the flight to Varennes only had a short-term impact on the authority of the unity. Okay, so what you want to be doing in that intro is just teasing your argument. I'm not fleshing out fully. I don't have the time to do that. Okay. So essentially you are doing, I'll show you what you do. So here's where I am defining the key terms in the question. So I'll put that in red. Here is my opinion. So I'll put that in like a orangey color. And then here is my actual rationale. So I'll put that in purple. Okay. So those are the three things you want to be doing. All right. So we've got defining key terms, stating your opinion, and then giving a rationale. If anything, that's probably still too long. Like I did say, do 2 sentences. I've done 3 there. So you could arguably just do it a little bit shorter. I think the issue with this question is I had to spend time defining the key term. And that's going to be worth it because when I'm then explaining in my answer, it means the essay will hold together a lot nicer. So then I'm going to start by saying the civil constitutions of the clergy not only removed the privileges of the church, why that's about privileges like that, privileges of the church, but also radically altered the position of the church in society. Given the church's importance, in fact, we'll do that in our explanation. So basically, not only but also radically altered the position of society, making it the more important factor. Okay, so I'm then going to start by saying the civil constitutions, firstly, when I'm typing on Mac, I know it right. Firstly, sought to remove the privilege status of the church. To remove the privileged status of the church and the corruption that came with it. Then here I'm going to talk about the fact that fixed pay scales were introduced to replace the tithe. And there was a so what else do I have to put out? So and there was a crackdown on the issues of pluralism and absenteeism, and with priests being assigned to one diocese only. One diocese only. Okay, so now I'm going to say this was an important development in the revolution, as it now meant that much of the corruption in the church was abolished, and the church was now fell in line with a revolutionary line with. Now the church now fell in line with church now fell in line with the church is now more in line with the aims of the revolutionaries. Given that corruption had been such a prevalent aspect, had been so prevalent, it's not a significant break. And then I say the civil constitutions also radically changed the position of the church. In the Ancien regime, the church was meant to be independent. Sorry, was meant to be independent and above the monarchy, divinely ordaining the Bourbon absolute monarchs. However, the civil constitutions effectively made the church part of the state, which meant it was no longer an independent body. This was demonstrated further when the clerical oath was introduced. I need the specific date. Introduced in November 1790, which ensured that the church was brought under the power of the government rather than being the source of power as it had been for the kings in the Ancien regime. Okay, something like that. Okay, say something like so I could say I'd consider a counter argument, then I'm moving to my analysis. Say, however, although 50% of clergy became refractory priests in opposition to the civil constitutions, um, the the laws were um, the new the, eventually France. And then we'll say this makes the civil constitutions more significant or in developing the French Revolution as it marked a permanent break with the past, which had long-term effects for all of France. Which had long-term effects for all of France, unlike the flight to the Rhine. It only had a short-term. It had short-term, significant short-term. Okay, so I'm going to do more analysis at the end of my second paragraph, but I've got to make sure that analysis is present. So let's just go through. So in red, we've got our point sentence. We've then got here, which is my first piece of evidence. Then got here, my explanation. No, sorry. Yeah, so that's my explanation in green. We've then got the evidence here. Sorry, that's the evidence there. And there's a brief bit of explanation here. Then we go to counter argument and analysis. So that's going to be purple. Okay, so that's paragraph one done. So then I'm say, although it was not as significant as the civil constitutions, the fight to ruin still contributed to the development of the French Revolution because it eroded the king's authority in the short term and raised questions about monarchy. Okay, so here I want specific evidence. So I'll talk about the fact that on the 20th of June, he wants to join. He travels in a Berlin to meet Bouillet, sorry. Yeah, okay, so firstly, so I talk about here, firstly, on the 20th of June, Louis decided to flee Paris in protest at the revolutionary reforms and traveled in disguise a Berlin to the border to be met by General Bouillet of Austria, who had 10,000 waiting. This marked a significant. This created this developed the French Revolution as it raised questions about the validity of a constitutional monarchy if the king was willing to king to flee and join in with royalist foreigners needed his own people, undermining the idea of the Okay, that's Louis's training like signature nickname kind of thing. Right. So then I will then talk about so that's my first bit. I then talk about so we've done the key events of the fight. We then would say this was further reinforced by the fact that Louis left behind a proclamation, which was a official document denouncing the French Revolution. French Revolution. The fact that he was willing to publicly condemn the revolution, to condemn the revolution in private, French Revolution, to publicly condemn the revolution, suggested to the people of France he had been against the revolution. Uh, that's, okay, so I've put a bit of analysis in there. I'll show you in a second. I'll highlight it. So I've gone quiet again. It's just because I'm staying fully focused. So lastly, the flight to Lorraine led to short-term questioning of the monarchy by groups in Paris, Marat, Ford, the Cordeliers to host the champions. Okay. Right. So that's basically it. So then I'll say, however, flight to Bahrain was clearly not as significant as the civil institutions. Firstly, only people in Paris demonstrated clear anger towards the king for what he had done, suggesting it was not a France-wide phenomenon, unlike the civil constitutions, which affected all of France. Secondly, the flight to Bahrain only led to distrust in the short term. In the long term, Louis was forgiven. So then I want to talk about the fact that he's given a temporary suspension in July, and then yeah, so he was forgiven by the assembly, who gave him a temporary suspension in July, and then created a false story about how he had been kidnapped. The assembly also allowed him to move back when he showed support for the new constitution and supported Brissot's demands revolutionary war. Okay, so that's basically that. So here is arguments in red, and we've got evidence. Got explanation, and we've got evidence again. Okay, then we've got exclamation again. So again, like with the 20 mark, you want to be alternate. This is counter argument, so this would be analysis. Look how much analysis is in this one, though, guys. Honestly, a lot of analysis in this one. Um, so look, all of that is analysis. And that's evidence there. Okay. Right. Not all evidence needs to be explained. Most of the time it does need to be explained. So that one is an example of it not being fully explained. So then I'm never doing my conclusion. So I might say, in conclusion, the flight to Bahrain led to a short-term questioning of Louis' monarchy, Louis' right to rule, which did mark a break with the Ancien regime, where Louis' power was absolute and was rarely questioned. That said, this questioning only took place by radical groups in Paris and was not widespread. In contrast, the civil conflict was not so widespread. Libya was ultimately forgiven, and the flight to Bahrain therefore had not as much long-term significance. In contrast, the civil constitutions marked a break with the past, permanent break with the past, and fundamentally changed the position of the church in France forever. Therefore, the civil constitutions had a great impact on the French Revolution. Okay, that's basically it. All right, so you basically just restate your argument and just restate the link. Okay, so always try and link your factors on this question. The big thing was timing. So obviously, because I've gone through and highlighted, and I've also been writing like very full answers, so you wouldn't need to write that much to get all the marks. I'm trying to just show you what perfect looks like. Obviously, in an exam, you need to prioritize your timing. So you won't be able to do as much detail as that. But I want you to have an example for you to rely back on, be able to look at to kind of give you guidance as to kind of how to answer these questions. But yeah, I hope you found that was helpful. Just remember the big things are conclusion in this, link your factors, and then 15 to 20 minutes. So stick to the timing and be ruthless with yourself. All right, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.